All right. All right, guys, let's go ahead and check out this video. So JD Vance. There was an intro and stuff. I cut that out so we can go right to the speech. Let's check out the Vice President of the United States absolutely humiliating European leaders and calling them out for, I mean, it's really good because, one, you got to have the guts to annoy a lot of people like this, but he's saying some very important stuff. Lots of European nations are heading in a dangerous direction. We've all seen the 60-minute clips where Germany is saying now they're storming people's houses and stuff for insults. You insult people. And it can be an insult on social media, and they're coming to get you. Wild stuff. And these are AP's heroes. These are AP's heroes. Oh, Germany does everything right. They're screwing up, man. They're screwing up. Stop worshiping them. All right. Here we go. JD Vance, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you. And thanks to all the gathered delegates and luminaries and media professionals. And thanks especially to the host of the Munich Security Conference for being able to put on such an incredible...
What?
Did you just say you're welcome when he said thank you?
Yeah, he said thank you. That's politeness, man.
We have the same thing. We have the same stupid sense of humor sometimes. It's just...
that we're, of course, thrilled to be here. We're happy to be here. And, you know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about today is, of course, our shared values. And, you know, it's great to be back in Germany. As you heard earlier, I was here last year as United States Senator. I saw Foreign Secretary David Lammy and joked that both of us last year had different jobs than we have now. But now it's time for all of our countries, for all of us who have been fortunate enough to be given political power by our respective peoples, to use it wisely to improve their lives. And I want to say that, you know, I was fortunate.
Dang. I didn't catch that when I first watched it, but hey, I just joked with this guy that we both have new positions. And one thing we need to remember is that we have this political power so we can help our people and make their lives better. Isn't that interesting? Like every other European politician right now, like, we have to use our power to silence people and oppress them and conquer them. Freaking idiots. Anyway, back this up a little bit. I liked that.
State Senator. I saw Foreign Secretary David Lammy and joked that both of us last year had different jobs than we have now. But now it's time for all of our countries, for all of us who have been fortunate enough to be given political power by our respective peoples, to use it wisely to improve their lives. And I want to say that, you know, I was fortunate in my time here to spend some time outside the walls of this conference over the last 24 hours. And I've been so impressed by the hospitality of the people, even as, of course, as they're reeling from yesterday's horrendous attack. And the first time I was ever in Munich was with my wife, actually.
Oh, hang on. He said after yesterday's attack. Which attack was that? The attacks are so frequent now, I can't even keep track of them. It's like every day there's an attack in Germany or Austria. Or which one was that? Is that the car one? Is that the car?
Yeah. There was where a car plowed into a crowd and injured 30 people. Wait a minute. I want to check the latest updates on that, actually. 2 people are now announced dead meanwhile. So 37 people were injured. 2 people were killed in the attack in Munich. And the attack was carried out by an Afghan asylum seeker and Muslim who shouted Allahu Akbar and La ilaha illallah and so on as he was taken on the ground.
Scoop Dog says, don't you think Vance looks like he's always got mascara on his eyelashes? Yes, he does. But some people are just born like that. Like when they say maybe he's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline, some people are actually born with it. They don't need the makeup. Isn't that interesting? And we have here, Sean recommends a 2 golf course solution. That's a good idea. 2 golf course solution. What?
37 people were injured. 1 child was resuscitated on the site. 2 people died because of their injuries. A 37-year-old Algerian-born woman, so another immigrant from the Muslim world, died in the attack, and her 2-year-old daughter also died from injuries in hospital 2 days after the attack. This is how the attack resulted.
And everyone just keep in mind that if you have any problem with being slaughtered, then you're a racist, Islamophobic, hate-mongering bigot. Cross Defender says, David Wood for president in 2028. The irony here is that convicted felons, actually, there's nothing that says convicted felons can't run for president. There's all sorts of other things convicted felons can't do. Being president is not among them. You can actually run for, you could be a repeat offender and have multiple felonies and still run for president. So this is a live option, ladies and gentlemen. I could take over and run this place.
So just think about this. Think about the irony or the absurdity of the situation right now in Europe, that the situation has gotten so weird that a Muslim terrorist goes and carries out an Islamic terrorist attack in the name of Allah against the kuffar, as instructed by ISIS and other terrorist organizations, and in this terrorist attack kills 2 people who are presumably Muslims. This is how absurd the situation has become in Europe.
It's pretty messed up. Pretty messed up. All right, back to Mr. Vance here.
Here with me today on a personal trip, and I've always loved the city of Munich, and I've always loved its people. And I just want to say that we're very moved, and our thoughts and prayers are with Munich and everybody affected by the evil inflicted on this beautiful community. We're thinking about you, we're praying for you, and we will certainly be rooting for you in the days and weeks to come. Now,
wait, hold on. He said he's praying for them and they clapped. Aren't these the people that like throw you in freaking jail if you pray? Bunch of lunatics. Anyway.
Yes.
Hypocrites. If he just said I'm praying for mothers out there who are considering aborting their babies or something like this, they'd lock him up.
To be fair,
they throw him in jail. What?
To be fair, they would throw you in jail in the UK.
That's true.
Which is like Europe in general is not as far gone as the UK. The UK is just kind of completely messed up by now.
Yeah, UK is more screwed up.
Yeah.
It didn't used to seem more screwed up than like France and stuff, but now it does.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I hope that's not the last bit of applause that I get, but
I've seen this. It basically is. There are other times when like 5 people are clapping and stuff like this, but there are a bunch of people that are clearly enraged at everything he says. It's funny.
we gather at this conference, of course, to discuss security. And normally we mean threats to our external security. I see many great military leaders gathered here today. But while the Trump administration is very concerned with European security and believes that we can come to a reasonable settlement between Russia and Ukraine, and we also believe that it's important in the coming years for Europe to step up in a big way to provide for its own defense, the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values shared with the United States of America.
Extremely important. Like most important thing that he could have possibly said. The threat here is not from without. The threat is from within. And if you're thinking, oh, but jihad is an external... No, European nations could not be conquered by jihadis unless European nations did it on purpose. So the threat is from within. European nations are under no risk of being conquered by Islam or jihad unless they're basically begging for it, which means it's an internal problem.
Now, I was struck that a former European commissioner went on television recently and sounded delighted that the Romanian government had just annulled an entire election. He warned that if things don't go to plan, the very same thing could happen in Germany, too. Now, these cavalier statements are shocking to American ears. For years, we've been told that everything we fund and support is in the name of our shared democratic values. Everything from our Ukraine policy to digital censorship is billed as a defense of democracy.
I like where he's going with this. Guys, the reason we've been united is our shared values. So what happened? You know what? You can see where he's going with this, right? Guys, the reason we're on the same side is supposedly because of our shared values. What happens because I'm looking at the way you guys are now and it doesn't look like we share values. What values do we share anymore? When you declare war on your own people and you're blasting away at people for praying, arresting people for praying, you're coming at people for insults. In Germany, you like insult someone online and stuff like that, and they're coming to lock you up. What shared values do we have now? Why are we on the same side? And of course, that's one big warning. Guys, you're really making it seem like we're not on the same side anymore. And like we're going to be your enemies because you guys are acting like a bunch of freaking communists here. Very intimidating, very intimidating. Let's intimidate them some more, JD Vance. Humiliate them.
But when we see European courts canceling elections and senior officials threatening to cancel others, we ought to ask whether we're holding ourselves to an appropriately high standard. And I say ourselves because I fundamentally believe that we are on the same team. We must do more than talk about democratic
JD
values.
Vance.
We must live them. Now, within living memory of many of you in this room, the Cold War positioned defenders of democracy against much more tyrannical forces on this continent. And consider the side in that fight that censored dissidents, that closed churches, that canceled elections. Were they the good guys? Certainly not.
Pause.
This guy says some good stuff, man.
There's a phrase that was used more and more and more. It is, I guess, it is falling out of favor increasingly since the end of the Cold War, which is leader of the free world or free world. Where there was always this understanding that America is kind of the leader of the free world, the Western world is the free world, as opposed to the other unfree world. The free world had freedoms, individual freedoms, where people can do whatever they want, where people can vote, elect whatever they want, say whatever they want, voice their criticism, and so on. This is supposed to be a quality of the Western world. He reminds everyone very, very, very clearly that those who were against freedom were the ones who would crack down on people's speech, on people's right to choose, on people's right to vote for whomever they want, say whatever they want, go wherever they want, and so on. Such restrictions were in place in the Soviet Union under communists and their other communist puppets. We're supposed to have freedoms. We're supposed to have Western freedoms. Right now, Western nations are inviting masses of people from other places in, this time not from communist places, but from other places, such as Islamic places. And therefore, for their sake, giving up this essential thing that made them different from the unfree ones, freedom. They're giving up free speech. They're censoring people. I think he's going to bring up something that is very familiar to us in a little bit.
That's your prediction?
Yes.
Let's see.
And thank God they lost the Cold War. They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners. I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content.
So Brussels, they're going to shut down social media when they see hateful content, hateful conduct.
Content.
Always creepy. Always creepy. Like, guys, even if you believe in banning hateful content for some reason, it's especially creepy when the government decides to do it, because what do governments do? They just, anything that is against them, they toss in the hateful content category. And then they ban what? They ban anyone who criticizes them in any way. Pretty creepy, pretty creepy.
Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action. I look to Sweden, where 2 weeks ago the government convicted a Christian activist for participating in Quran burnings that resulted in his friend's murder.
There we go.
You imagine your friend gets murdered?
Yeah. He just referenced Salwan Momika. He didn't mention him by name, but this is what he just referenced. So what he just referenced here is Salwan Momika, whom many might know, who was increasingly popular, especially on Twitter and TikTok, who several weeks ago was brutally murdered. It is kind of messed up to me how, I don't know if it's just me, I have been just traveling and very sick lately, couldn't pay much attention, but it seems like lots of people have kind of forgotten it. I don't see many people talk about Salwan Momika right now, but he was murdered. He was murdered for burning Qurans to make the point that it is not okay to kill people over a book. He was murdered. People came out in his defense. The majority of Muslims who reacted to his murder celebrated or justified his murder. I have said it again and again and again. To this day, I have only seen one single Muslim respond to it with disgust and with rejection and condemnation. And others who stood up for him actually got in trouble with the law in England and in Sweden. Others who stood up for him and also in solidarity burned Qurans were arrested. It's good that he references Salwan Momika, who is a hero, and I would urge everyone to post about him and to not forget him. And I ordered a bunch of Qurans.
Gonna read those Qurans? Gonna read all those Qurans?
Planning on reading them with fire to remember Salwan.
Reading with fire is the best way to read a Quran. Because, you know, it's like having a candle, but in the actual book. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You want a workout? Carry the golf bags and hike it. Lol. Why? Could actually just go to the gym. Pray for Tommy Robinson. Yeah, they're trying to break Tommy Robinson. I don't golf either. I just thought it would be fun. Oh, it might be fun for some people. It's not people with super high testosterone levels. D. Wood versus Robert in a nutshell. The closet where grandma's clothes are stinks. Is there an actual skeleton in there with them, or do they stink on their own? That's pretty much what it's like. Next debate, Con, you need to run it back with Jay Smith on the same topic. The comment section in your first debate states that you were humiliated, decimated, and intellectually decapitated. Lol. Yeah, I can always...
Intellectually molested.
There's enough different directions and enough material on this topic to basically dial it up every time we have this debate. So every time we have this debate on whether Muhammad existed, I can dial it up with new stuff, which makes it fun. Europeans, please bring back common sense too. It would be nice, but they don't seem to be heading in that direction. Loved both of your debates. You burly, handsome boys, you. This is Mandace Growens. But Robert made some excellent points as well. I'm not sure what to think now. No, he made no excellent points. Thank you for doing what you do. Bad eschatology starts wars, and so does Islam. People need to speak up about it. Preterism seems to be the worst, seems to be the most logical way to look at end times. God bless.
What does that have to do with anything here?
I don't know. Muslim debaters sound too long. Can we just call them Muz debaters?
What about
What?
most debaters?
We got it. We get it. Must debaters. We get it.
Okay. Nice.
Hey, look at this. David, AP, why are Muslims afraid of Chris Hansen? Because he keeps putting them on his show. Shout out to JD Vance for winning the 2028 election.
Nice.
Yeah, he might. JD is right. Europe sucks. It needs jihad ASAP.
I think that as much as I have respect for JD Vance, I think that after Donald Trump, first off, what should happen next is that we should abolish term limits. So Donald Trump should be president again as long as it goes, as long as he's alive. Once he is dead, his one of his sons should be elected to be the next president.
Yep.
When that one is dead, one of his sons.
I like that young one who's like seems psycho.
If he doesn't have sons, then one of his brothers should be. So it should stay within the Trump family.
These are all valid points. There needs to be a Trump dynasty, an entire Trump dynasty of leaders. What's that kid's name? Is it Barron? Is that a name?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that kid. Yeah, he'd be awesome.
Although I think if Ivanka is a little bit based, maybe we could just have a very quick, first female president thing.
A situation where you make the kid the ruler, but he still, you need he still needs his mom involved because he's still too young to make the best choices. Hi guys, Vance gives me hope, but conversations with UK people, many jump to defense of Muslims over jihad, say love thy neighbor, Gandhi, etc. Help. Yep. Yeah, you got some problems. You got some problems there. Check my post on AP's YouTube community. Elites cry. Oh, is that stuff them crying over this speech? If so, it's kind of pathetic. It's very obvious that ants are controlling JD and everyone in the government. Just can't figure out how. Can David help me understand? No. We do not know. But ants rule the world. Here's JD Vance.
And as the judge in his case chillingly noted, Sweden's laws to supposedly protect free expression do not, in fact, grant, and I'm quoting, a free pass to do or say anything without risking offending the group that holds that belief. And perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs.
Wait. Religious Britons. You need to be more clear, JD. Christian Britons. If you're a Muslim religious Briton, you've got the entire government backing you in whatever you do, no matter how sick and twisted and evil it is.
2 years ago, the British government...
On the screen just there, I think there was one of the Klitschko's on the screen.
Oh yeah, no, I do recall seeing, right there.
Yeah, there, yeah.
Yep. So with the Ukrainian delegation, we have Klitschko.
Perhaps most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago.
He speaks like an American. When he speaks to the British people, he can't speak like this. The British will just look at this and they will see, I do not accept this criticism from the American peasantry. That's what they will think. So
That's what you got to throw stuff in their faces. You got to be like, and I know you're not going to listen to me because I'm an American, but I'll just remind you that if it weren't for us, you'd all be speaking German. And even if you somehow defeated the Germans, you'd be the smallest freaking province in the Russian Empire. So pay attention to what we're saying, or we'll stop protecting you. You'll be eaten alive. Here to help you. Bunch of idiots. That's how you should roll.
The Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally,
Private prayer in their own homes. You might be breaking the law unless you pray the way we say.
the government urged readers to...
And the way we say is you must bow down and say,
I have to
oh,
say-
great God, Allah, Allah. What?
I have to say, compared to the last two vice presidents, this one is really impressive.
Whoa. You think this is more impressive than Kamala? Come on. Yeah, he does. He does seem cooler than Kamala. And then what's that guy? What's that guy with Trump's first term? I don't even remember his name.
That thing that's Mike Pence.
Yeah, Mike Pence.
Vance,
Pence have a similar
Just
sound.
thinking of the guy makes me want to go to sleep.
Not this guy. This
Yeah.
guy's like a supercharged V8 engine that became a person.
report any fellow citizen suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. And in the interest of comedy, my friends, but also in the interest of truth, I will admit that sometimes the loudest voices for censorship have come not from within Europe, but from within my own country, where the prior administration threatened and bullied social media companies to censor so-called misinformation. Misinformation like, for example, the idea that coronavirus had likely leaked from a laboratory in China. Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth.
Trying to think what his point was. Like, was he just randomly calling out the previous administration, or is he saying, "Hey, we've made our mistakes too, and we just made this one, and we learned from it and moved on and corrected it, and you guys need to learn from your mistakes and correct them and move on." But yes, guys, you had the Biden administration. Well, even before, like leading up to the election and so on, but then after the election and so on, telling companies like Facebook and Twitter and so on what they need to ban.
So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town. And under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight.
There's a new sheriff in town, and make no mistake about it, he will shoot you. He will shoot you. He is the sheriff. He has a gun. Do not mess with him. It's pretty basic.
The administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
Oh, how dare you. See that? See, this is what I mean. There's like 10 or a dozen people clapping for stuff like that, and everyone else is like clearly enraged that he's even saying that free speech is important and the government shouldn't be cracking down on it.
Now, we're at the point, of course, that the situation has gotten so bad that this December, Romania straight up canceled the results of a presidential election based on the flimsy suspicions of an intelligence agency and enormous pressure from its continental neighbors. Now, as I understand it, the argument was that Russian disinformation had infected the Romanian elections. But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
It is pretty rough if because you do have governments who are interfering in elections and so on. But it basically, you can use that to overrule any election if you want, right? Because foreign accounts are always going to have said something on it, even if it's like on Twitter and so on. So anytime you have an election, you don't like the outcome, you just say, oh, no, there was election interference. These guys posted stuff on Twitter, so we have to cancel this election until we get the result that we actually want. And then we'll say it's all good. It's kind of messed up. Actually. It makes great sense. 4 people clapping again.
Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now, again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say. But when when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them. Now, to many of us on the other side of the Atlantic, it looks more and more like old entrenched interests hiding behind ugly Soviet-era words like misinformation and disinformation, who simply don't like the idea that somebody with an alternative viewpoint might express a different opinion or, God forbid, vote a different way or, even worse, win an election.
That is what it looks like, ladies and gentlemen. Just looks like people have become obsessed with no one disagreeing with them and no one who opposes them winning any sort of election and using any means at their disposal to stop people from disagreeing with them or being able to say that they disagree with them or winning an election against them. And they're turning to other methods, which is exactly what the freaking commies did.
Now, this is a security conference, and I'm sure you all came here prepared to talk about how exactly you intend to increase defense spending over the next few years in line with some new target. And that's great, because as President Trump has made abundantly clear, he believes that our European friends must play a bigger role in the future of this continent. We don't think, you hear this term, burden sharing, but we think it's an important part of being in a shared alliance together that the Europeans step up while America focuses on areas of the world that are in great danger. But let me also ask you, how will you even begin to think through the kinds of budgeting questions if we don't know what it is that we're defending in the first place?
Dang. Did you guys catch that? Did you guys catch that? This is a brilliant speech. This is a brilliant speech, guys. Earlier is talking about, hey, the reason we've been on the same side and considered ourselves on the same side was shared values. But the direction you guys are heading does not look like shared values. It doesn't look like we share these values anymore. You look like you're against these values. You look like you have the values of the people that we spent decades standing against. And then here, it's what exactly are we defending? Like, hey, if we're, this is because, guys, this is a security conference, a bunch of European nations and the U.S. saying, hey, we need to focus on security and defending ourselves against threats and so on. And it's like, what are we even defending? What are we defending here? Like, are we defending totalitarianism, fascism? What are we actually defending? Because I thought we were defending our shared values, and that's why we're taking a stand on this stuff. But it doesn't look like you guys even believe that stuff anymore. So could you please tell me, do we have any clue what we're defending? And guys, if you're not clear on what you're defending, you end up with situations like they have in Great Britain, where now 11% of people in the 18 to 30 range or whatever say 11% say that they would actually fight for their country if they had to. 11%. They have no clue. What are you fighting for? What are you fighting for? You look around, he's like, I don't want to defend this place.
I've heard a lot already in my conversations, and I've had many, many great conversations with many people gathered here in this room. I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important?
G.K. Chesterton said, the true soldier fights not because he hates what is in front of him, but because he loves what is behind him. Right. The best kind of soldier is someone who's not fighting because, hey, I hate this thing in front of me, I'm going to shoot it. It's, I love what I'm defending so much that I'm willing to fight for it. And you have this problem in Europe right now. People don't know what the heck they're defending. They're looking around. They've been taught to hate their own nations. Like, even without all the problems, just hate themselves. And you're creating nations where people don't know what they're defending and have no desire to defend it. And here they are having these big meetings on security. It's like, defending what? You guys are going to go fight against threats so that you can continue oppressing your own people and locking people up for saying something wrong that you disagree with or insulting someone? It's insane.
I agree in principle, but it's AP Chesterton, not GK.
AP Chesterton. That is funny.
Believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people. Europe faces many challenges, but the crisis this continent faces right now, the crisis I believe we all face together, is one of our own making. If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump.
Dang. If you're oppressing your own people, nothing you can do for us and nothing we can do for you. In other words, guys, did you catch it? Again, this is brilliant. He's not saying it as meanly as he could, but think, we were on the same page because we shared values. It doesn't look like you guys even share those values anymore. And so if that's the direction you're heading, and we're sitting here at our security conference figuring out what agreements we can come to support and defend each other, if you guys are not fixing this stuff and you guys are heading this direction, there's nothing we can do for you. We have no interest in defending you while you oppress your own people. Not interested. We have no interest in defending you from Russia or Islam or anything else. We have no desire to defend you when you're locking your own people up for praying. We're not interested. We're not interested. And just to be clear, this would be a complete severing, because what can you do for us? How can you help us? There's nothing we want to do to help you. And what can you do to help us if this is the direction you're going? You're something else now. You're becoming something else that we do not want to defend, and we don't want anything to do with you. It's pretty beastly.
It does sound like he's really humiliating them, though. Like, it's like he is being very, very, very patronizing and humiliating them, and maybe they deserve it. Maybe that's just what they need. That's just what they need, because you stand here in America and you look at Europe and you hear Western worlds and Western values, but now in 2025, you're in America, you look at Europe, and if you are still very, very loyal to your values, when you look at Europe, you think they're not like us, So that's that. They're not like us.
I do like the implication here.
That's fine.
I do like the implication. If you guys, the implication, guys, without saying it, he's hinting at it. If you guys are we're not gonna keep protecting you if this is what you're doing. we're not going to protect you from threats. You take an organization like NATO, where if you attack one nation, you're attacking all those nations. No one really cares about most of those nations in terms of their militaries and so on. What you're really saying is if you mess with NATO, you're messing with the United States, and the United States is protecting its allies. That's what it means. If you get to a point where you're saying, hey, we have no interest in defending you, you guys got some rough times ahead, and you freaking deserve it if that's how you're acting. You deserve it.
You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results?
He said Mandates Owens. He thought, I have proof. I now have the documentation that proves that Mandates became Candace after having a surgery.
If you're running in fear of your own voters, there is nothing America can do for you. Nor, for that matter, is there anything that you can do for the American people who elected me and elected President Trump. You need democratic mandates to accomplish anything of value in the coming years. Have we learned nothing that thin mandates produce unstable results? But there is so much of value that can be accomplished with the kind of democratic mandate that I think will come from being more responsive to the voices of your citizens. If you're going to enjoy competitive economies, if you're going to enjoy affordable energy and secure supply chains, then you need mandates to govern, because you have to make difficult choices to enjoy all of these things. And of course, we know that very well in America. You cannot win a democratic mandate by censoring your opponents or putting them in jail, whether that's the leader of the opposition, a humble Christian praying in her own home, or a journalist trying to report the news. Nor can you win one by disregarding your basic electorate on questions like who gets to be a part of our shared society. And of all the pressing challenges that the nations represented here face, I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration.
What?
Today, almost...
What? He just called him out. He called him out for what they're doing. Huh. Mass migration, bringing in tons of people to outnumber your own people.
1 in 5 people living in this country moved here from abroad. That is, of course, an all-time high. It's a similar number, by the way, in the United States, also an all-time high. The number of immigrants who entered the EU from non-EU countries doubled between 2021 and 2022 alone. And of course, it's gotten much higher since.
Doubled in 1 year.
And we know the situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city.
What did you say?
You keep saying how we think the same thing. Yes, we both thought whores. We both thought it. Yes, we did.
What did you just say?
I was waiting to see if you had some sort of reaction, and then I saw your lip quivering like you were about to laugh. He said horrors. Horrors. He's not talking about whores. What's wrong with you?
I paused for a second because I'm trying to make sense of what he just said, but that it didn't make sense.
The horrors. Horrors. 2 syllables. Horrors.
I see. Okay.
This situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again.
I saw many horrors. Dude, you know what I mean? He's talking about a terrorist attack. When he says the horrors, it's a terrorist attack. And all you're thinking is, what is he talking about prostitutes for? Come on, clean up your mind.
This is the thing with English, with Americans. It's not my fault. It's the fault of Americans. It's because of how Americans speak. It's not my fault. It's never my fault. It's your fault. You have to fix the way you speak.
You should learn English, and that way you won't have these problems.
Okay.
The world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. And of course, I can't bring it up again without thinking about the terrible victims who had a beautiful winter day in Munich ruined. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and will remain with them. But why did this happen in the first place? It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction?
Good point.
No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants.
Wow. You catch that? No voter. When they were putting you, he's talking to leaders, ladies and gentlemen. He's talking to leaders. He's talking to politicians, saying no one who put you in power was saying, hey, you know what we need? We need tons of Pakistanis and Afghanis terrorizing us and banging our daughters. That's what we need. No one said that. No one put you in power for that.
But you know what they did vote for? In England, they voted for Brexit, and agree or disagree, they voted for it. And more all over Europe, they're voting for political leaders who promise to put an end to out-of-control migration. Now, I happen to agree with a lot of these concerns, but you don't have to agree with me.
I get it. I get it. I didn't listen to the speech. I didn't have the time to sit down and ever actually listen to the speech. I only saw bits and pieces of it here and there posted. But I saw German media, European media complain and cry about it and screech about it. I saw the German leftist and mainstream elite media go crazy about it, about how this is an interference and affront to Europeans and so on, while the people were mostly just with it and thought, oh, good stuff here. I saw the AfD celebrate the heck out of it and say, yes.
You see.
And I see it now, because this kind of stuff, the speech that he's giving right now here, this is unacceptable by the standards of the elitist parties that have established themselves among Europeans over European countries. The situation in Europe with politics is really, really weird. Like, it's probably hard to understand from an American perspective, but you have a multi-party system that is essentially a good thing in almost every country. But
yeah, sometimes I think it's better. It's a better system than the two-party system. Well, I mean, keep in mind, there's nothing in the U.S. that says there has to be this two-party system and stuff. It just turns out like that because whenever you end up with a third party, that third party is closer to one of the other parties, and they split the vote, and then your opposition wins. And so you just end up with a two-party system and so on. But yeah, not like European Parliament.
But what happens is that certain parties that align more with the elitist and leftist mindset have made it a tendency to, within countries, within national parliaments, form major coalitions in order to drown out the populist or patriotic or right-wing or just centrist or libertarian aspects, and to then try to take over governments. And then you add the European Parliament to it. The European Parliament, of course, came into existence, which started regulating, independent national parliaments around Europe. So the European Parliament is basically the epitome of elitism in Europe, and is dictating all kinds of garbage that people in Europe don't even want and believe in. And this elitist system has began dictating after a point what people basically can and cannot say, what people can and cannot hear. This is what people mean when they say that Europe has turned, or the European Union has turned into this socialist network of making decisions for the people, whether they like it or not, and so on. But this whole speech here, this is how more than half of Europeans think. This is how more than half of Germans think, according to polls taken over the last 2 decades. But you can't go out and make speeches like this without being labeled a Nazi, without being labeled a fascist, a racist, and whatever it is. the media and the elitist leftist parties in question will attack you and punish you for it. This guy comes here and gives directly this speech and says what more than half of the population in these countries think. And for this, he is blasted. But he's right. Enough with the stupid, with the idiocy of mass immigration. Enough with the suicide of Europe.
And I have to say, because I already listened to this when people recommended it, and then I was like, oh, let me go and check this out. This is significantly more brutal than I was aware of when I first listened to it. Like I thought he was, hey guys, I have some, I wanted to point out some problems with some stuff you're doing. And now listening to it more closely, this is a big threat. This is one big threat, right? This is, we are not going to keep aligning with you, and we are not going to keep defending you. And we will pull out. We will pull out of groups like NATO and so on, because we're not interested in defending this if you guys keep this course. So you either fix your stuff or count us out. And that is very, very interesting.
Let me give you an example. So I just went to Germany with
how many times are you going to brag about it?
With a friend who is the former Canadian ambassador to Israel, Vivian Berkovici. We just went to Israel together, traveled there, met with some really, really nice and really important people, politicians from the AfD and others, and looked into the politics and the current situation and how it's going. And here is basically what's happening in Germany right now in politics. The AfD, which is the Alternative for Germany, which is the a big major umbrella party of centrists, slight leftists, but mostly center right and right wing people. They are currently rising in polls. They are crushing it. They are above 20%. Then there is the CDU, which is the conservative Christian party that, however, really very much betrayed Germany and caused all the mess that we are in with the whole mass migration, which is why people got so disillusioned with them and started voting for alternatives. These together, if they combine their voter base and their power, could take over basically Germany and turn things around if they went with what German people want. However, in the German parliament, the AfD itself cannot take matters into their own hand. They have to collaborate with some other party in order to establish a proper government, in order to have the sufficient numbers for a government. So the only close party that they can think of collaborating with would be this Christian Democratic Union Party, this supposed Christian Conservative Party. They could technically get together with them and form a stable government in order to go into a corrective, proper direction. However, within this party, which Merkel was also the leader of, there are basically two major factions. One is the very conservative side, and one is the Merkel side. And the Merkel side happens to be one that is that has very much betrayed Europe and betrayed Germany, even when so much of this Christian conservative party wants to actually sit down and think of collaborating with the center and the right and make things right and think about deporting people. The Merkel faction and other factions within the conservatives pressure them into not working with the AfD. And then there are other factions inside the German parliament that also pressure each other to basically build what they call a firewall around this AfD party. So what they do thereby is, despite the fact that most of the German population now wants a reversion of the mass immigration policies, there are elements within the media and within politics that block out these efforts for fixing Germany and thereby make it impossible to fix Germany and keep leading it into the direction that it has been going so far, which is a horrible direction, a direction of self-destruction, a direction of suicide, of European suicide. They don't want to listen to Europeans. If you do listen to Europeans, you are labeled a fascist, a racist, a Nazi, and those established old parties make sure that it stays this way. Now here comes JD Vance and gives a speech that everybody needs to hear, but that they cannot hear, that they are usually not allowed to hear in Europe. He just stands there and humiliatingly forces everyone to listen to it. This is balls, and it's good.
I think there needs to be, because again, this is brilliant stuff. When he's talking about shared values and so on, at least a shared value of loving your country and want to see it survive and flourish and could not be dominated by jihadis. At least that fundamental value. I think there needs to be a new organization based around that idea. In other words, it's like, hey, the United States, Poland, Israel, nations that actually like their nations and don't want to hand them over to a bunch of lunatics. We'll all stick together and defend each other. And all you guys who are hell bent on destroying your own populations and oppressing your own populations, you know what? Form your own group. We're not defending you anymore.
Based.
That does seem like where he's going with all this.